I'll bet my watch right now if you can translate this." The millionaire businessman laughed loudly, looking with contempt at the waitress. He had no idea he was betting with the wrong person. "Watch where you're going, clumsy!" Marcus Thompson shouted when Sofia Rodriguez barely brushed against him while serving bourbon whiskey at the adjacent table. The amber liquid almost splashed onto his $3,000 Italian suit, and that was enough to awaken all his fury. It was a Friday night at Le Bernardin, one of the most expensive restaurants in Manhattan, located in the heart of Midtown. The atmosphere exuded luxury, from Austrian crystal chandeliers to French imported furniture. The clientele consisted exclusively of New York's elite: businessmen, politicians, famous artists, and heirs to great American fortunes. Marcus was especially irritated that night because he had lost an important international contract that afternoon. A German company had decided against doing business with his luxury hotel chain after a presentation he considered perfect. The rejection had deeply wounded his Texan ego. Sophia, 38 years old, just lowered her head and murmured a "sorry, sir," while balancing the heavy tray with plates that cost more than her weekly salary. Her movements were precise and elegant, the result of 2 years of experience in Manhattan's most demanding restaurant, but Marcus could only see flaws. "Look how she dresses," Marcus commented, loud enough for Sophia to hear, addressing the friend dining with him. "These people have no notion of how to present themselves adequately. The uniform barely pressed, worn shoes. It's depressing." Jake, his businessman friend, laughed uncomfortably. "Marcus, she just bumped into you accidentally, man." "Accidentally?" Marcus raised his voice, making other tables look in their direction. "That's a symptom of incompetence. Professional waiters don't bump into clients. She clearly wasn't trained properly." Sophia continued serving nearby tables, but each word was like a stab. Marcus had no idea that she spoke 4 languages fluently, had a bachelor's degree in modern languages and a master's in translation, or that she had worked in international diplomatic environments. "Patricia!" Marcus called the restaurant supervisor with an impatient snap of his fingers. "Come here now." Patricia Martinez, a 50-year-old woman who had worked at Le Bernardin for 15 years, approached quickly. She knew Marcus since he started frequenting the restaurant and knew exactly how to handle his explosive temperament. "Yes, Mr. Thompson, how can I help you?" "How many times do I need to say, 'I don't want this waitress serving my table'?" Marcus pointed brazenly at Sophia, who pretended not to be listening. "She's clumsy, rude, and doesn't have enough class to serve clients of my social level." "Mr. Thompson," Patricia tried to maintain a diplomatic tone, "Sophia is one of our best employees. She's worked here for 2 years, and we've never had serious complaints about her performance." "Best employees?" Marcus let out a cruel laugh that echoed through the restaurant. "Patricia, you need to review your quality criteria. Look at her. She can barely carry a tray without causing accidents." Other clients started paying attention to the conversation. Some seemed embarrassed by Marcus's rudeness. Others just watched as if it were free entertainment. "These people," Marcus continued, gesturing toward Sophia, "don't understand what quality service is. They think they can work anywhere, but they don't have the education or sophistication necessary for an establishment of this level." Jake tried to change the subject. "Marcus, how about we order dessert? I heard the creme brulee here is exceptional." But Marcus was far from finishing his speech. "You know what the problem is, Jake? They give jobs to anyone nowadays. They don't do proper selection, don't check backgrounds, don't invest in training." Sophia felt her cheeks burn with shame and anger, but maintained professional composure. She had learned in the last 2 years that reacting would only make her situation worse. She desperately needed that job. It was one of 3 occupations she maintained to pay bills and her mother's medical treatment. Besides, Marcus continued relentlessly. People like her will never succeed in life because they don't have ambition or intellectual capacity for anything else. The words cut deep into Sophia's heart. Marcus didn't know she had been fired from a prestigious position for reporting corruption, that she fought daily to maintain dignity while supporting a family in financial crisis. "Patricia, next time I come here, I want another waitress at my table," Marcus continued, raising his voice even more to ensure the entire restaurant could hear his words. "I don't pay $500 for dinner to be served by unqualified people." He threw the linen napkin on the table with theatrical force, making the baccarat crystal glasses tremble and produce a sharp sound that cut through the atmosphere. "These people don't understand social hierarchy. They think they can circulate in the same environment as educated people, as if they were equal to us." Sophia felt her blood boil, but took a deep breath and counted to 10. It was a technique she had learned during her free therapy sessions at the community health center, the only one she could afford. Reacting now would mean losing her job, and her family couldn't afford that luxury. "Mr. Thompson," Patricia insisted, trying to maintain peace in the establishment. "Sophia has never caused problems before. She's punctual, polite, and many other clients really appreciate her service." "Other clients?" Marcus looked around with a disdainful air, as if evaluating a cattle herd. "Are you comparing my importance to other patrons? Patricia, you know perfectly well that I spend more money here in a single night than most of these people spend in an entire month." In the kitchen, chefs and assistants stopped working to listen to the discussion that was becoming increasingly heated. Everyone knew Marcus and his reputation for mistreating employees, but they had rarely witnessed such a direct and systematic attack. "I've been a VIP client of this establishment for over 5 years, Marcus continued, tapping his index finger on the table to emphasize each word. "My opinion should carry infinitely more weight than any feedback from occasional customers." Jean-Pierre, the French chef of the restaurant, peeked through the kitchen door with an expression of disgust. He had worked in luxury establishments in Paris and London, but had rarely seen such a display of gratuitous arrogance. "Furthermore," Marcus continued, now clearly enjoying the situation and the attention he was receiving, "look at her closely. Did she even finish high school? I seriously doubt she can do basic math, let alone understand etiquette, service protocol, or adequate social behavior." Sophia clenched her fists until her knuckles turned white, fighting against the overwhelming impulse to respond that she had 2 university degrees and spoke 4 languages. Marcus didn't know she had dined with ambassadors, coordinated international diplomatic events, mastered etiquette protocols from different cultures. "People like her," Marcus said, picking up the menu without even looking in Sophia's direction. "We're born to serve. It's the maximum they can achieve in life with the intellectual and social limitations they have. And on top of that, they do this basic work inadequately." The other restaurant clients now openly watched the spectacle. An elderly couple at the corner table seemed genuinely uncomfortable with Marcus's cruelty. A young socialite discreetly filmed with her phone, clearly planning to post something on her social media about the drama at Le Bernardin. "Mr. Thompson, please," Patricia tried once more with a slightly trembling voice. "Let's maintain civility. This is a family-friendly and respectful environment." "Civility?" Marcus laughed loudly, a laugh that sounded more like a bark. "I'm being perfectly civil, Patricia. I'm just pointing out obvious facts and making legitimate observations about service quality. If this bothers you, maybe you should consider hiring more qualified and competent employees." Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Marcus, I think we've talked enough about this. How about we focus on dinner?" "No, Jake." Marcus shook his head vehemently. "This is exactly the kind of conversation we need to have more frequently in our society. Someone needs to have the courage to speak the truth about these issues of social class and professional competence. Sophia discreetly served the adjacent table, but her hands trembled imperceptibly. Each of Marcus's words was like salt being thrown on open wounds. She thought about her mother at home, confused and scared because of Alzheimer's, depending on her to survive. She thought about the bills accumulating on the kitchen table, the expensive medicine she needed to buy next week. "You want to know the truth?" Marcus addressed Sophia directly for the first time. "People like you should be grateful to have any job at all. The world owes you nothing." The tense and embarrassing atmosphere was abruptly interrupted when Marcus's phone rang with the theme from The Godfather. It was his personal assistant, and from the urgent ringtone, something was definitely wrong. "Mr. Thompson," Marina's trembling and desperate voice echoed through the restaurant via speakerphone that he instinctively activated. "We have an extremely serious emergency that needs to be resolved immediately." Marcus frowned, irritated by the interruption. "Marina, I'm having dinner. What kind of emergency can't wait until Monday?" "Sir, we received extremely urgent documents from Gruppe Bayern Hotels, that German hotel conglomerate interested in buying our chain. They want a definitive answer by midnight tonight, without exception." Marcus's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Gruppe Bayern Hotels was one of Europe's largest hotel companies, with properties in Munich, Berlin, Hamburg, and Vienna. If they were interested in his hotel chain, this could mean the deal of his lifetime. "What kind of documents?" Marcus asked, suddenly focused and completely forgetting his tirade against Sophia. "They're acquisition contracts, sir. 47 pages of complex legal terms, all written in German. I tried using Google Translate and other apps, but it's very confusing. They're specific legal terms I couldn't understand properly." "What do you mean you couldn't understand?" Marcus exploded, his voice echoing through the restaurant and making all clients turn in his direction. "This is a $300 million negotiation. I can't afford misunderstandings." Patricia and other employees stopped their activities to listen to the conversation. It was extremely rare to see Marcus Thompson, the all-powerful businessman, showing any kind of vulnerability or desperation. "Sir," Marina continued with an increasingly tense voice, "I've already called all the translation companies in New York that work on weekends. Since it's Friday night, none can provide a specialized legal German translator on short notice. The best I got was a promise for Monday morning." "Monday morning?" Marcus screamed, hitting the table so hard that the olive oil spilled onto the white linen tablecloth. "They'll cancel the offer. The Germans already made it clear they have other hotel groups interested in Europe, and this is a unique window of opportunity." Other clients began whispering among themselves, some clearly enjoying the desperation of the man who moments before had shown such arrogance and superiority. Marcus began walking nervously between tables, panic taking over his usually confident expression. The deal of his lifetime was literally slipping through his fingers because of a simple language barrier. "What about online automatic translators?" he asked desperately, already knowing it would be a completely inadequate solution for legal documents. "I tried them all, sir. Google, Bing, DeepL, all available ones. But they're very specific legal terms from German commercial law. There are clauses about international assets, European Union regulations, complex tax issues, due diligence procedures. It needs someone who really understands not just the language, but the entire German legal system." Marcus stopped walking and looked at his phone with an expression of despair he had never shown publicly. "This is completely impossible. A city of 8 million inhabitants and nobody can translate some commercial documents. Sir, I continue trying all the contacts I have, but keep trying, nothing." Marcus hung up the phone so forcefully he almost broke it. Damn, how can it be so difficult to find someone who speaks German in this giant city? Jean-Pierre, the French chef, murmured something in French that sounded like a mixture of compassion and satisfaction, seeing the arrogant businessman in trouble. The restaurant clients whispered animatedly among themselves. Some seemed genuinely sympathetic to Marcus's situation. Others showed certain sadistic pleasure in seeing him desperate and vulnerable. "I can't believe this," Marcus muttered to himself, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair and messing up the imported gel. 15 years building this business, and I'm going to lose the opportunity of my lifetime because of a language. Jake tried to console him. "Marcus, calm down. There must be a solution. How about calling the German embassy? They must have interpreters on duty." "Embassy?" Marcus looked at his friend as if he were a genius. "Of course. Why didn't I think of that before?" He immediately dialed the German embassy in Washington number, but after a few minutes of waiting, was informed that consular services didn't work on weekends, except for emergencies involving German citizens in danger. "Shit!" Marcus shouted, making an elderly lady at the nearby table startle. "Sorry, Mom. I'm going through a very complicated situation." Marcus returned to his table, but it was completely impossible to disguise the nervousness consuming him. His hands trembled as he picked up his phone and began making increasingly desperate calls to his entire network of contacts. "Hello, Robert. Marcus Thompson speaking. Listen, you who work with imports and have international contacts, do you know any German translator who can work tonight? It's a life or death business emergency." Long pause. "What do you mean you don't know anyone? Don't you have business partners in Europe?" The first call was a complete failure. Marcus immediately moved to the second, dialing numbers with increasingly nervous fingers. "Helen? Marcus Thompson. I need a huge favor, for God's sake. You who've worked for years importing German machinery must know specialized translators, right?" Another frustrating pause. "Only Mandarin and English." "Damn, Helen. That doesn't help me at all." Patricia watched the situation with a growing mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. It was absolutely the first time she had seen Marcus truly vulnerable, begging for help from people he normally treated with condescension or total indifference. "Carlos, my dear friend," Marcus tried a third call, now adopting a much more humble and pleading tone. "Don't you have a German translator in your consulting company? Please, man, it's really an emergency, a matter of business, life or death." Long and painful pause. "I understand. Only French and Spanish. Thanks anyway. Appreciate it." Sophia continued working methodically, serving other tables with her usual efficiency, but paid careful attention to every desperate word coming from Marcus's mouth. He was clearly in total panic, and she could see drops of sweat forming on his forehead despite the restaurant's powerful air conditioning. "This can't be happening," Marcus muttered to himself while frantically flipping through his phone's contact list. "There has to be someone, some contact in this damn city." He made 5 more consecutive calls, all resulting in painful failures. With each "can't help" or "don't know anyone" he received, Marcus became visibly more agitated and desperate, his usual composure disintegrating publicly. "Mr. Thompson," Patricia approached cautiously, almost afraid to interrupt. "May I suggest you look at private universities? Maybe some German professor from NYU, Columbia, or Fordham could help in an emergency like this." "Universities!" Marcus looked at her as if she had just solved Fermat's theorem. "Patricia, you're a genius. Why the hell didn't I think of that before?" He immediately began calling all the language departments he could remember. First NYU, then Columbia, followed by Fordham, even the New School. But it was Friday after 10:30 p.m., and obviously no academic department was operating during administrative hours. Shit. Marcus repeated like a desperate mantra, running his hands through his hair so forcefully he was creating a completely disheveled appearance. How can it be so impossible? German isn't Mandarin or Arabic. It's a relatively common European language. The other restaurant clients now watched the spectacle openly, without any discretion. Some even began whispering suggestions among themselves, creating a general buzz in the environment that was normally characterized by silent elegance. "What if you try the German consulate in New York?" politely suggested a middle-aged client from the adjacent table, a distinguished-looking gentleman who appeared to have experience in international business. Marcus called immediately, his hopes momentarily renewed, but it was obvious from the first ring that there would be no one available to answer on a Friday night. The automatic service informed that consular services operated only Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. "I can't believe this!" Marcus shouted, throwing his phone on the table with enough force to make the silverware jump. "This country is a complete cultural desert when it comes to international languages." With each minute that passed mercilessly on his $50,000 Rolex, Marcus felt the $300 million opportunity slipping inexorably through his fingers. The midnight deadline approached like a guillotine, and he could almost hear the sound of the axe falling on his dreams of international expansion. Jake tried one last desperate suggestion. "Marcus, how about posting on social media? Someone might see it and help." "Social media?" Marcus looked at his friend desperately. "Jake, this is a confidential $300 million business. I can't expose commercial details on Facebook." It was exactly at this moment of total desperation and frustration that Marcus, at the height of his exasperation, decided to transform his anguish into a cruel and theatrical joke that would mark that night forever. He stood up dramatically from the table, grabbed his phone where he had received the documents by email, and looked around the restaurant with a bitter and sarcastic smile that everyone would later recognize as the prelude to something very special. "Listen up, folks," Marcus shouted with a theatrical voice, tapping a dessert spoon against the crystal glass to get the attention of absolutely all clients and employees present. "I want to make an irresistible proposition for you all." The restaurant fell into absolute and expectant silence. All conversations ceased instantly. All silverware stopped in midair. All heads turned to look at Marcus, who was now clearly at the center of attention, exactly where he always liked to be, especially in moments of crisis. "I have some documents here in German," he said, waving his phone in the air like it was a trophy, "that I need translated by midnight tonight. They're very complex legal contracts, extremely serious stuff, involving millions of dollars in international business." Some clients laughed discreetly, thinking he was making a joke to relieve the tension of the moment. The restaurant atmosphere was charged with curiosity and expectation. "So," Marcus continued, with that cruel and condescending smile that Sophia knew so well and that always foreshadowed some kind of public humiliation, "I'm going to make a bet to liven up everyone's night and solve my problem at the same time." He walked theatrically to the restaurant window and pointed to his black Tesla Model S Plaid parked right in front of the establishment under the streetlights, shining like an expensive jewel under Manhattan's night sky. "I'll bet my $100,000 watch if you can translate this," Marcus shouted with all the force of his lungs, laughing loudly as if it were the most hilariously absurd thing in the world. "Whoever can accurately translate these documents wins my Rolex right now. No discussion." The restaurant exploded in collective laughter and spontaneous applause. It was an obviously impossible joke. Who there, in that environment of rich but not necessarily polyglot clients, could translate complex legal documents in German? "A Rolex worth $100,000, Marcus continued, greatly enjoying his own theatrical generosity. "For whoever understands this complicated language of Beethoven and Einstein." The clients laughed even louder, some to tears. The situation had all the elements of perfect comedy. A rich businessman in desperation, making impossible promises to people who obviously had no qualification to help him. "For that insane price, I'll learn German in 5 minutes," animatedly shouted a client from the back table, a young tech entrepreneur. "I accept the challenge. Where can I sign the contract?" joked another, a middle-aged lawyer, causing more general explosive laughter. "Guten Tag, Oktoberfest, Volkswagen," shouted a socialite, pretending to speak German and causing hysterical laughter at her table. The situation had completely transformed into collective and spontaneous comedy, with everyone present making jokes about instant consultants, magic translators, and miraculous methods of learning languages. Marcus loved being the center of attention, especially when he could demonstrate his financial superiority so theatrically and dramatically. "Come on, come on!" Marcus gestured dramatically like a circus presenter. "Don't be shy. Who wants to win a brand new Rolex? Just translate some papers. Easy as apple pie." Jean-Pierre watched from the kitchen with a barely disguised expression of disgust. In his 20 years working in luxury restaurants, he had rarely witnessed such a display of gratuitous arrogance and social insensitivity. "This is better than any Broadway show," commented loudly an intoxicated client, clapping enthusiastically. But in the middle of all this confusion, laughter, and general commotion, one person observed everything in absolute silence and with a completely different expression from all others present. Sophia was in the corner of the restaurant, methodically organizing empty tables for the next shift, paying careful attention to every word coming from Marcus's mouth. For 2 long years, she had been treated as completely invisible, heard prejudiced comments, been ignored as if she weren't a human being worthy of consideration. When she managed to get a quick and discreet look at the phone screen that Marcus was waving in the air like disposable trash, her eyes widened in a way no one noticed. It wasn't surprise at the language itself. It was at the specific content she could understand perfectly, word by word, comma by comma. Sophia took a deep breath, feeling her heart accelerate, and took a determined step forward, emerging from the shadows of the restaurant's back where she had remained discreet during the entire comedy. "Excuse me, Mr. Thompson," she said, with a firm but respectful voice, cutting through the laughter and general noise. "I can help with the translation." The entire restaurant fell into silence, so absolute you could hear the almost imperceptible hum of the air conditioning and the distant noise of traffic on the street. Everyone turned simultaneously to look at the waitress who had dared to interrupt the boss's collective fun. It was as if someone had pressed the pause button on a comedy movie. Marcus stopped laughing instantly and stared at her with an expression of total incredulity, as if she had just spoken in an alien language. "You what?" he asked slowly, as if he hadn't heard correctly or was trying to process completely impossible information. "I said, I can translate the documents for you, sir," Sophia repeated calmly, maintaining an erect and professional posture. "I know the German language." The laughter that exploded in the restaurant was even louder and more hysterical than all the previous ones. Clients laughed until tears ran down their cheeks, thinking it was the most absurdly funny joke they had ever heard in their lives. The waitress, a simple waitress, wanting to translate complex legal documents that not even specialized professional translators could solve. Marcus laughed so hard he had to lean on the table to avoid falling, holding his stomach as if in pain. "Did you all hear that, folks? The waitress here is polyglot. She probably studied at the University of Berlin." "That's great, honey," he continued with sarcasm dripping from every word. "So you're going to make me earn $300 million translating German commercial contracts? Because you obviously studied international law at Heidelberg University, right?" The clients laughed even more hysterically. Some even clapped rhythmically. thinking it was the funniest comedy show they had ever witnessed at the elegant Le Bernardin. "Look here," Marcus continued, still laughing and addressing the audience like an experienced comedian. "The girl who can barely carry a tray without bumping into important clients wants to solve a problem that left professional translators pulling their hair out." "Yeah, stop insisting, sweetheart," condescendingly said a client from the nearby table, a businessman who seemed to greatly enjoy the situation. "This is very serious stuff, not child's play." "Exactly," another client added loudly, a middle-aged lawyer. "You'll just complicate things more for the poor man. Let the college-educated adults solve grown-up problems." A 50-year-old socialite covered in jewelry laughed loudly. "Honey, go back to the kitchen. This kind of thing isn't for people like you." But Sophia didn't waver even 1 millimeter. She knew exactly what she was doing and why. There was something in her posture, in the way she kept her shoulders straight and her gaze firm, that caught attention in an indefinable way. A determination that absolutely didn't match the image everyone there had of a simple waitress. "Mr. Thompson," she said calmly, completely ignoring the laughter and sarcastic comments, "you yourself said you'd give your watch to whoever translated it. I'm here offering to try to help you." Marcus stopped laughing for a few seconds, surprised by her persistence. There was something in Sophia's voice that bothered him deeply, a confidence that simply shouldn't exist in someone of her social and educational position. "All right," he said, deciding to turn this into even more entertainment for the clients. "Since you stubbornly insist on embarrassing yourself in front of everyone here, I'll give you this unique chance to publicly humiliate yourself." He approached her with a theatrical and disdainful gesture, like a king granting audience to a peasant. "But when you can't translate even the first paragraph, I want you to formally apologize to everyone present for making us waste precious time with this ridiculous clown show. And furthermore," Marcus continued, now clearly enjoying himself like a predator playing with its prey, "if you can't translate adequately, you'll have to serve my table personally for 2 full months without receiving a single cent in tips. How about that bet?" The clients laughed and applauded the cruel bet, as if watching a gladiator being thrown to the lions. It was pure and gratuitous cruelty, but they were having fun as if it were a circus spectacle. Sophia looked directly into Marcus's eyes without blinking or showing any sign of intimidation. "I accept all conditions, Mr. Thompson." The determination in her voice made some clients stop laughing momentarily, feeling that perhaps there was something more to this story than appeared on the surface. Marcus extended his phone to her with a theatrically disdainful gesture, as if handing a weapon to a soldier for a suicide mission. "Go ahead, genius. Show us all how professional translation is done." Sophia took the device with reverential care, as if holding something extremely valuable and fragile. The exact moment her eyes met the text on the screen, something completely changed in her facial expression and body posture. It was as if she had come back to life after years of hibernation, as if an essential part of her personality that had been dormant for a long time had suddenly awakened and returned to control. "Acquisitions Vertrag," she said in a low but clear voice, reading the first line of the document with pronunciation that sounded strange and musical to Brazilian ears present. "Bayern Hotel Gruppe für die Akquisition der Thompson Hotels USA Kette." The restaurant fell into absolute and sepulchral silence. Everyone stopped laughing instantly and simultaneously, as if someone had flipped a switch. It was completely impossible to fake that perfect pronunciation, that natural and musical fluency that came from Sophia's mouth, as if she had been born and raised on the streets of Munich or Berlin. Marcus's eyes widened to look like 2 ping-pong balls. You're really reading that? Understanding what's written?" "Yes, sir," Sophia responded naturally, still with her eyes concentrated on the documents. "It says here, Acquisition contract from Bayern Hotel Group for the acquisition of Thompson Hotels USA chain. Marcus's jaw literally dropped and remained open for several seconds. Even more shocking than discovering she spoke German was hearing this woman he despised and regularly humiliated, demonstrating perfect mastery of a language he didn't even know she knew. How is this possible?" murmured Jake, Marcus's friend, genuinely impressed. "Continue," Marcus said, his voice coming out almost as a hoarse whisper. "Continue reading, please." Sophia continued, translating with fluency that left absolutely everyone present completely speechless and in shock. Die Bayern-Gruppe, vertreten durch Herrn Klaus Müller, bekundet formelles Interesse an der Akquisition von 100% der Anteile der Thompson Hotels Kette. She read perfectly. Einschließlich aller Immobilien, Markenrechte, Betriebsvermögen und Franchise-Rechte. "My God in heaven," murmured Patricia, bringing her hand to her chest. "She really knows German. Perfectly." Sophia turned to the next section of the document and continued with the same impressive ease. Der vorgeschlagene Wert für die Transaktion beträgt 300 Millionen Euro, zahlbar wie folgt: 200 Millionen bei Vertragsunterzeichnung und 100 Millionen in jährlichen Raten von 20 Millionen für 5 aufeinanderfolgende Jahre. 300 million euros. The number echoed through the restaurant like deafening thunder. Marcus had to lean on a chair to avoid fainting or falling to the floor. It was even more money than he had imagined in his most ambitious dreams. The Germans were offering an absolute fortune for his modest American hotel chain. "But there are specific conditions and a deadline," Sophia continued, turning to the next page of the document. "Das Angebot ist gültig bis Mitternacht heute, brasilianische Zeit. Wenn bis zu diesem Zeitpunkt keine formelle Antwort vorliegt, wird das Angebot endgültig und ohne Möglichkeit einer Neuverhandlung zurückgezogen." Marcus looked frantically at the watch on his wrist. 10:52 p.m., just over an hour and 8 minutes to respond formally and save the deal of his lifetime. "How do you know German?" he asked, still trying to mentally process what was happening before his eyes. "Where the hell did you learn to speak like that?" Sophia carefully folded the documents on the phone screen and returned the device to him with a respectful but confident gesture. "I was an official interpreter at the German consulate in New York for 8 consecutive years, Mr. Thompson, specialized in commercial contracts and international legal documents." The last clients who were still whispering stopped completely. The restaurant fell silent again, but this time it wasn't from laughter or fun. It was from pure shock and total incredulity. This woman they saw every day serving tables, cleaning glasses, carrying heavy trays, and being treated like furniture had been an official interpreter at an international consulate. "We're an interpreter?" Patricia asked, with genuine curiosity and a touch of growing admiration in her voice. "But then, what happened? Why are you working here?" "It's a long story," Sophia sighed deeply, "and not very pleasant to tell." "Tell us," Marcus said, his voice now completely different, without any trace of previous arrogance. "I want to understand how a consular interpreter ended up serving tables in my favorite restaurant." Marcus's tone had changed completely. For the first time in years, he was speaking to Sophia as if she were a real person with history, dignity, and inherent value. Sophia looked around the restaurant, seeing all those people who moments before had laughed at her now observing her with respectful curiosity and expectation. It was a strange sensation after 2 years of invisibility. "I lost my job at the consulate 3 years ago," she began, sitting in the chair Marcus Offered, the first time she sat at a table as an equal during all the time she worked there, I reported a very serious corruption scheme involving some high-ranking officials. "What kind of corruption?" asked a client, a distinguished gentleman who seemed to have experience in international business. "Some officials were selling fake visas and facilitating illegal entry of people into the United States," Sophia explained. "They were also falsifying birth and marriage certificates for people who wanted to obtain German citizenship improperly." Marcus leaned forward, genuinely interested. "And you reported this?" "Yes. I took evidence to the FBI, to the State Department, and to German authorities. 5 officials were arrested, including the deputy consul." "And then?" asked Jake. "Then I became public enemy number 1 of the institution. They not only fired me summarily, but spread that I was problematic, destabilizing, disloyal. They put me on an informal blacklist in diplomatic circles." The restaurant was completely absorbed in the story. Jean-Pierre had come out of the kitchen and leaned against the counter to listen better. "No consulate, embassy, or translation company wanted to hire me," Sophia continued. "My reputation was completely destroyed in diplomatic and academic circles." "But did you try working in the private sector?" Patricia asked. "I tried starting my own translation company," Sophia replied. "I managed to get some small clients, but without initial capital, and with my tarnished reputation in the field, it was impossible to grow." Marcus listened in silence, beginning to understand the dimension of injustice he had witnessed without knowing. "And how did you end up here?" a client asked softly. Sophia took a deep breath before continuing. "My mother was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's 4 years ago. It's an expensive disease, imported medications, physical therapy, constant neurological monitoring, specialized caregiver." "Wow," murmured a lady, "that must cost a fortune. More than $4,000 a month just in medications. The health insurance cut our coverage when we lost our jobs. My husband was also fired around the same time." Marcus felt a knot in his stomach. For 2 years, he had cruelly treated a woman who was fighting a heroic battle to keep her mother alive and dignified. "That's why you accepted working as a waitress?" a client asked. "I had no other option," Sophia explained simply. "I urgently needed a job with health benefits to have access to the company's health plan. When Le Bernardin offered the position, I accepted the same day." "But that was 2 years ago," Marcus observed. "Why didn't you look for another job after stabilizing?" Sophia smiled bitterly. "Mr. Thompson, do you think it's easy to explain in a job interview why a former consular interpreter with a master's degree is working as a waitress for 2 years? People automatically assume you're lying about your background or that you did something seriously wrong." The truth was more painful than anyone in the restaurant was prepared to face. They had lived daily with an extraordinarily qualified woman, treating her as if she were completely invisible and incapable. "Besides," Sophia continued, "the salary here, even being low compared to what I earned before, was at least fixed and guaranteed. I could pay for my mother's treatment and maintain our home. It wasn't my dream job, but it was honest and dignified work." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair, vividly remembering all the times he had complained about her, how he treated cleaning staff and waiters as if they were disposable objects. "Did you never think about telling someone about your real background?" a client asked. "What for?" Sophia shook her head. "For you all to think I was blatantly lying. To be fired for not fitting the job profile. To be seen as a failure who can't maintain a job in her field. I learned that sometimes it's better to be underestimated than to be discredited," she added philosophically. "And your husband, how did he deal with this whole situation?" Patricia asked caringly. My husband Roberto got a job as an Uber driver. He earns less than me, but at least we're managing to survive together. He supports me in absolutely everything and never made me feel lesser because of the work I do." Marcus looked at the clock, 11:05 p.m. There was still time to send the response, but he needed to act quickly. "Sophia," he said, finally completely swallowing his pride, "are you absolutely certain about the translation? Can you also help me with the formal response I need to send?" "I'm absolutely certain, Mr. Thompson," Sophia responded with professional confidence. "Actually, I worked with dozens of similar contracts when I was at the consulate. I know exactly the format, specific legal terms, and protocols they expect in the response." Marcus took a deep breath, feeling for the first time a spark of real hope. "And can you do this within the deadline? We have less than an hour." "I can perfectly. But besides translation, I can prepare the formal response in German using adequate technical terms and correct diplomatic protocol." "Diplomatic protocol?" Jake asked, impressed. "Yes," Sophia explained patiently. "Commercial communications with European groups follow specific protocols. If Marcus responds inadequately or informally, it could compromise the entire negotiation." Marcus looked at her with a mixture of admiration and desperation. "How much do you want to do this?" "You already made a public offer," Sophia responded, looking directly into his eyes. "Your watch." Marcus swallowed hard. The Rolex was worth $100,000, but compared to 300 million euros, it was literally insignificant. "I accept," he said without hesitation. "But everything has to be perfect and ready by 11:45, so I can review and send on time." "It will be," Sophia guaranteed, "but I'll need a computer with good internet connection, email access, and no one to interrupt me during work." "Patricia," Marcus turned to the supervisor, "free the manager's office for her immediately and provide everything she needs. Coffee, water, anything." "And one more thing," Sophia added. "I'll need your corporate email and password to send directly from your business account. This will give more credibility to the response." Marcus didn't hesitate even 1 second. "Of course, I'll give you all the information." While Sophia headed to the office, clients and employees began whispering among themselves with admiration and incredulity. "I really can't believe what just happened," murmured a businessman from the corner table. "The woman we've seen cleaning tables for 2 years is an international diplomacy specialist," responded another, shaking his head. Marcus stood in the middle of the restaurant, still trying to completely process how he had so underestimated someone. For 2 entire years, a former consular interpreter with specialization in international law had served his table, and he never noticed. Worse still, he had systematically treated her as if she were inferior and incapable. In the manager's office, Sophia sat before the computer and took a deep breath. For the first time in 3 long years, she felt truly useful and valued again. It was like coming home after forced exile. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with the precision of an experienced pianist, translating not just literal words, but capturing all legal, diplomatic, and commercial nuances that a common translator would completely miss. While working with absolute concentration, she thought about everything she had gone through in recent years. 3 years of constant humiliation, being treated as if she were invisible, hearing comments about her supposed incompetence and lack of education. Ironically, now she was the one financially saving the man who most despised and publicly humiliated her. Outside the office, Marcus walked nervously through the restaurant, looking at the door every 2 minutes. 300 million euros, the business of his entire life, depended completely on the woman he had called incompetent just an hour before. The irony of the situation didn't go unnoticed by absolutely anyone in the restaurant. The person he least respected had suddenly become the most important and valuable of all. Marcus, Jake approached. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm processing what happened, Marcus responded honestly. For 2 years, I treated an international specialist as if she were an uneducated idiot. And now she's saving your business, Jake observed. More than that, Marcus said thoughtfully. She's saving me from myself. Imagine if I had lost this opportunity through pure arrogance and prejudice. Patricia approached with 2 cups of coffee. One for you, Mr. Thompson, and another to take to Sophia. Thank you, Patricia. And thank you for always defending her, even when I was being a complete idiot. I always knew there was something special about Sophia. Patricia smiled. She has a natural elegance that can't be taught, a refined education that shows in details. How so? Marcus asked, curious. The way she speaks, how she carries herself, how she treats people. Even being humiliated, she always maintained dignity. That's not something from someone without formal education. Marcus reflected on Patricia's words. Really, now that he thought about it, Sophia had always expressed herself more sophisticatedly than most employees. He had just chosen to ignore the signs. And there's one more thing, Patricia added. Several times I saw her helping foreign clients who didn't speak English well. She conversed with them in Spanish, French. I thought it was just basic knowledge, but now it makes sense. How many languages did she say she speaks? Jake asked. 4 fluently, Marcus responded. German, English, French, and Spanish. Plus Portuguese, obviously. 5 languages, Jake whistled, impressed. That's more than most professional diplomats. The clock showed 11:25. Marcus felt each second passing like an eternity. 11:35 p.m. The office door opened and Sophia emerged with a confident and satisfied expression, carrying an organized folder with several printed documents. The entire restaurant stopped all activities to observe when she approached Marcus's table with sure and professional steps. Ready, Mr. Thompson, she said, carefully placing the organized documents on the table. Complete translation, with all legal terms explained in detail, plus the response letter already written in perfect German. Marcus picked up the papers with hands that trembled, slightly from anxiety and expectation. The translation was absolutely impeccable, with each paragraph meticulously explained. It wasn't simply a basic literal translation, but a high-quality professional document that included explanatory notes about the German legal system and implications of each clause. Here's everything about the proposal in detail, Sophia continued, pointing to specific sections with the precision of an experienced consultant. Bayern Hotel Group doesn't just want to buy the physical hotels. They want the entire Thompson brand, including management methodologies, service protocols, and your specific expertise in the American market. Marcus read each line with eyes widening with growing admiration. It was much more complex and comprehensive than he had initially imagined. The Germans didn't just want his properties, they wanted all his accumulated knowledge about American hospitality and domestic tourism. And this response letter? He asked, picking up an impeccably written document in German with perfect diplomatic formatting. Formal confirmation of interest and unconditional acceptance of proposed conditions, Sophia explained professionally. It needs to be sent by corporate email until midnight. I also prepared a complete version in English for your lawyers to review in detail tomorrow and an executive summary for your board. Patricia approached to observe the documents with respectful curiosity. Sophia, this is absolutely incredible. It looks like work from a first-class international law firm. Because that's exactly what it is, Sophia responded modestly. I've prepared hundreds of similar documents when I worked at the consulate. This type of international commercial communication has very specific protocols. Marcus was about to pick up his phone to check email when his assistant called again, clearly even more nervous than before. Mr. Thompson, an urgent message just arrived from the Germans, Marina said with a tense voice. They want a video conference at 11:50 to discuss some specific contract points before definitely closing the deal. Marcus felt his blood freeze instantly in his veins. Video conference? When? In what language? Now, sir, in 15 minutes, Mr. Müller himself will participate plus 2 specialist lawyers. Everything will be conducted in German, obviously. Marcus turned pale as paper. Video conference in German? Marina, that's completely impossible for me. The restaurant fell silent again expectantly. Everyone immediately understood that a new crisis had emerged at the last moment. Without the confirmation video conference, they won't close the deal at all, Marina continued inexorably. They said it's mandatory standard procedure for all transactions above 200 million euros. Marcus looked at Sophia with an expression of absolute desperation. Could you participate in the video conference? Do simultaneous interpretation in real time? Sophia thought quickly for a few seconds, evaluating the situation. I can perfectly, but it'll have to be here in the restaurant. We don't have time to go to your office. Here in the restaurant? Marcus asked, looking around. Why not? Patricia intervened quickly. We can use the manager's office. It has a large table, excellent internet connection, and professional environment. Marcus looked around the restaurant. All clients were following the situation as if it were the end of a suspense movie. Some had even cancelled dessert orders to not miss the story's conclusion. All right, he said, taking a deep breath and making a decision. Let's do the video conference right here. 11:47 p.m. Marcus, Sophia, and a dozen curious people squeezed into the small manager's office, transforming the environment into an improvised war room. The laptop was connected to Zoom, awaiting the most important call of Marcus's business, life. Mr. Thompson, Sophia said with professional calm, adjusting the camera position and testing audio. During the video conference, let me completely conduct the conversation. I'll translate everything for you in real time and guide your responses appropriately. Marcus nodded nervously, sweating more than a job interview candidate. For the first time in his life, he was completely dependent on someone he had systematically despised. One important thing, Sophia added, they're going to test your knowledge about American hospitality. I'll ask questions that highlight your strengths and local experience. How so? Marcus asked, worried. I'll suggest strong points you might not mention alone. Do you trust me? Marcus looked into her eyes. Completely. The call arrived punctually at 11:50. On screen appeared 3 elegant men in a luxurious office in Munich. Crystals, antique furniture, Renaissance paintings on walls. Guten Abend, Herr Thompson, said the middle man, clearly Klaus Müller, a distinguished 60-year-old gentleman with perfectly styled grey hair. Ich hoffe, Sie haben unser Angebot erhalten und es ist zu Ihrer Zufriedenheit. Sophia instantly translated, whispering in Marcus's ear. Good evening, Mr. Thompson. I hope you received our proposal and it's to your satisfaction. Say yes, that you received it and are very interested in the business, Marcus whispered back. Ja, Herr Müller, Sophia responded fluently on Marcus's Behalf. Wir haben Ihr ausgezeichnetes Angebot erhalten und Herr Thompson ist äußerst interessiert an der Transaktion. Er betrachtet diese Gelegenheit als perfekt abgestimmt auf seine Pläne für internationale Expansion. Marcus was impressed. She hadn't just translated what he asked, but improved the response, making it more sophisticated and businesslike. Perfect, Müller smiled. Wir hätten einige spezifische Fragen bezüglich Ihrer Operationen in den USA. Perfect. We would have some specific questions about your operations in the USA, Sophia translated. The conversation flowed for 20 intense minutes. The Germans asked detailed questions about average hotel occupancy, revenue per room, American tourism seasonality, local marketing strategies, relationships with tour operators. Marcus responded in English and Sophia translated perfectly, but more than that, she improved and professionalized his responses, demonstrating business knowledge that impressed even Marcus. Herr Thompson möchte betonen, Sophia said, without Marcus suggesting, dass seine Expertise im amerikanischen Markt gefestigte Beziehungen zu europäischen Reiseveranstaltern umfasst, insbesondere deutschen und schweizerischen, die 35% seiner internationalen Kundschaft darstellen. Marcus looked at her surprised. She had mentioned correct data he hadn't thought to highlight, that 35% of his international clients were German and Swiss. Interessant, responded Dr. Hans Weber, one of the German lawyers. Und bezüglich Umweltgenehmigungen, die USA haben sehr spezifische Vorschriften. About environmental permits, the USA has very specific regulations, Sophia translated. Marcus responded about his environmental certifications, and again, Sophia expanded the answer. Herr Thompson möchte präzisieren, dass alle seine Hotels ISO 14001 Zertifizierung haben und mit Projekten zur Erhaltung amerikanischer Nationalparks zusammenarbeiten. Ein Aspekt, der von umweltbewusster europäischer Kundschaft sehr geschätzt wird. The Germans seemed increasingly impressed. Sophia was presenting Marcus as a sophisticated and environmentally responsible businessman. Eine entscheidende Frage. Müller leaned forward. Betrifft die Kontinuität des Managements. Wir würden es vorziehen, die lokale Führung für die ersten 3 Jahre beizubehalten. A crucial question about management continuity. They would prefer to maintain local leadership for the first 3 years, Sophia translated. Of course, I accept completely, Marcus responded. But Sophia went further. Herr Thompson akzeptiert nicht nur, sondern schlägt einen 3-jährigen Managementvertrag vor, der den graduellen Übergang und die Aufrechterhaltung der Qualitätsstandards gewährleistet, die die Marke Thompson zum Synonym für Exzellenz im amerikanischen Markt gemacht haben. Marcus was impressed by her insight. She had transformed a simple acceptance into a value proposition. Ausgezeichnet, Müller smiled broadly. Eine letzte Frage. Was sind Ihre Pläne für die Expansion in andere amerikanische Staaten? What are your plans for expansion to other American states? Sophia translated. Marcus spoke about vague plans for California and Florida, but Sophia transformed this into a strategic presentation. Herr Thompson hat bereits strategische Gelegenheiten in Kalifornien, Florida und Texas identifiziert, mit abgeschlossenen Machbarkeitsstudien und vorläufigen Kontakten zu lokalen Investoren. Die Akquisition durch die Bayern-Gruppe würde diese Projekte erheblich beschleunigen. The Germans exchanged satisfied looks. Herr Thompson, Müller finally said, wir sind sehr beeindruckt. Wir werden mit der Akquisition gemäß den besprochenen Bedingungen fortfahren. When the call ended at 12:15, the office exploded in applause. Marcus had just closed the deal of his lifetime. Sophia, Marcus said, standing up and extending both hands in gratitude. I have no words. You didn't just translate. You sold me to them in a way I never could have alone. It was my job to make you look like the best businessman possible, Sophia responded modestly. Marcus took the Rolex keys from his pocket, a solid gold keychain with the crown emblem. A promise is a promise. He placed the watch in her hands ceremoniously. The watch is officially yours. The entire restaurant erupted in enthusiastic applause. Clients who had laughed at Sophia 2 hours before now applauded her, standing with genuine admiration. "One more thing," Marcus said, raising his hand to silence the crowd. "Sophia, I want to offer you an official job, Director of International Relations at Thompson Hotels, starting salary of $25,000 per month plus 2% participation in the company's net profits." Sophia was genuinely speechless for the first time that night. I don't know what to say, Mr. Thompson." "Say you accept," shouted Patricia with tears of joy in her eyes. "I accept," Sophia said, also starting to cry, "but with one condition." "Anyone," Marcus responded immediately. "I want to continue working here at Le Bernardin on weekends. You all were my family when I needed it most. I won't abandon the people who welcomed me." Marcus smiled. "Of course. Actually, that gives me an idea." He addressed everyone present in the restaurant. "Folks, I want to make a public announcement." The restaurant fell into expectant silence. "I want to formally apologize, not just to Sophia, but to all of you who witnessed how I systematically treated her. For 2 years, I judged an extraordinary woman by appearance and social position, almost losing the deal of my lifetime through pure arrogance. The silence was absolute. Everyone paid attention. Starting today, I'm creating a scholarship fund for restaurant, hotel, and service employees in general who want to return to school, change careers, or develop hidden talents. No one else should have to hide their potential due to financial necessity." The applause was deafening and emotional. "Furthermore," Marcus continued, "I established today a professional development program. Any Thompson Company employee who demonstrates talents or qualifications beyond their current function will receive immediate opportunity for internal growth." A socialite who had mocked Sophia earlier approached embarrassed. "Sophia, I want to apologize for what I said. It was prejudiced and cruel." "No need to apologize," Sophia responded graciously. "We all judge by appearances sometimes." One by one, other clients approached to apologize and congratulate. Sophia received each gesture with elegance and genuine forgiveness. Jean-Pierre came out of the kitchen with a champagne bottle. "Mademoiselle Sophia, on behalf of the entire kitchen, our congratulations. You were always a lady." Marcus observed the scene with a mixture of pride and shame. "Sophia, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "How did you manage to maintain dignity during all those years of humiliation?" Sophia thought carefully before responding. "Mr. Thompson, I learned that our dignity doesn't depend on how others treat us, but on how we choose to behave. I knew who I was, regardless of how I was seen." "You're a life lesson," Marcus said sincerely. "And you learned the lesson," Sophia responded. "That's what matters." 3 months later, Sophia was in her new office on the 15th floor of Thompson Hotel's corporate building, coordinating integration with Bayern Hotel Group. Her mother now received the best available medical treatment. Her husband had returned to university to finish engineering, and she had finally returned to working with what she loved. Marcus had learned to value each employee, regardless of position. The scholarship program had already benefited 50 people, and 3 employees had been promoted after revealing hidden qualifications. Every Friday, Marcus dined at Le Bernardin, always in Sophia's section when she worked weekends there, always with absolute respect. The black Tesla was parked in the building's garage. Sophia rarely used it, preferring public transportation, but it was a powerful symbol of how a single night can change everything. Sometimes life's most important lessons come from people we least expect, and sometimes a cruel bet can transform into the most transformative experience someone ever had. The invisible waitress had become the company's most respected executive, and the arrogant boss learned that true success isn't in humiliating others, but in recognizing and valuing the extraordinary talents that exist around us. "I'll bet my $100,000 watch if you can translate this," had been a phrase said out of arrogance, but ended up being the phrase that changed 2 lives forever and taught everyone that dignity, competence, and human value don't depend on uniform, position, or social class. End of story.